Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, August 15th, 2022. I am Dave Biddle flying solo on today's show. A lot to get into. It was a huge weekend for the Buckeyes, both on the field with the 2022 team. We'll get to that. That's going to be the crux of the show, is talking about what happened on the field this weekend for the Buckeyes. And it was a good recruiting weekend as well, because yesterday, Buckeyes received the news that they landed four-star safety Jayden Bonsu. That gives them 20 commitments in their 2023 class. They are ranked as the number 4 class in the country, but they have the second highest average player rating behind only Alabama. And their average player rating is really close to Bama's. Bama's is 94.1 or something like that. Ohio State's is like 93.6. So number 4 class overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. But if you look at average player ranking, Ohio State right there at the number 2 class. I think they're going to finish with at least 25 kids in this class. Anybody who follows recruiting, I'm not breaking news there. They could get up to 26. It's going to be a big class. They already have 20, and they got plenty of room left, and they're still in on some good ones. So great to get Jayden Bonsu in the class. And I think it's important to point out because we've probably all been guilty of it. I haven't said it that much, but it's clearly the defensive recruiting is not on par with the offensive recruiting. We know that, but I tend to think the defensive recruiting might be, getting a little bit. People might be a little hard on the new staff. They just got here, and they have landed 8 4-star defensive players in this class. 9 of the 20 in the class are defensive players. The only 3-star defensive player in the class is Will Smith Jr., who I think is underrated. I think he's going to be a 4-star. He's put on a lot of weight. We know the lineage. I think he's going to have a huge year at Kaufman, and he'll be bumped up to a 4-star. So anyway, the point is, yeah, obviously offensive recruiting is better. The staff's been in place. Ohio State is known for having a fantastic offense under Ryan Day. You got, skill position players are just going out of their way to come here, quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. Offensive line, I think they can, that's one area they can step it up a little bit. But I like this O-line class, though, in 2023. I like the 4 guys they got, the 3 4-stars from Ohio. And then the 1 3-star kid who I think is a bit underrated. And I like, if you're going to take a chance on a kid, take a chance on a kid that's 6'6", 310 pounds that moves well, in Miles Walker. So, but I just wanted to point out that defensive recruiting might be going a little bit better than what the narrative says. And getting Jayden Bonsu yesterday, very good get there. And this class is good when Jayden Bonsu is, a solid 4-star recruit. Like I said, the number 22 safety in the country, number 3 player out of New Jersey, same high school as Cody Simon, linebacker Cody Simon. And he's the 14th rated player out of the 20. Bonsu is the 14th highest rated player in Ohio State's class. He'd be a top 5 player in most classes, not Alabama's, but certainly in most Big Ten classes. All right, let's move on. I really want to talk about the team itself. So Saturday was a huge day. They had their first full-scale scrimmage going live. It was closed. I wish I could tell you like everything, but did have a source, put a few lines in the water, got a bite yesterday back. Don't have a tremendous amount of details, but the biggest thing is the defense is now, I don't know if they're completely staying with the offense, but they're giving the offense a tough time. My source either wasn't clear or didn't really want to tell me who won, but said it was very close between the offense and the defense. And the offense the last 2 years, they just were used to having their way with the defense during scrimmages. Not all the time. Obviously, the defense is going to make plays even last couple years, but just like what they said in spring, the defense is making things a lot harder on the offense. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, with stuff like that with scrimmages, you always can look at it. Oh, maybe that means the offense is, maybe reading their press clippings a little too much, and they're not looking that good. I don't look at it like that. This offense is going to be elite. The question going into camp was what? How's the defense going to look? How quickly are they going to take to this Jim Knowles scheme? How are they going to execute it? And we won't know until the games begin. But the fact that this defense has gone from the offense really having its way with it, the last couple years to now. It's a good fight out there when those guys go at it. So that was good news. That was the biggest takeaway, was just overall that the defense had a good day. Even if they didn't win the scrimmage, we'll find out. We're going to be over there later today. We'll see if anybody reveals it. We're getting Kevin Wilson after practice today around 11:30, offensive coordinator and he's usually pretty open to saying a lot of things. I won't be surprised if he reveals who won the scrimmage, especially if it was the offense. I bet he reveals it. If the defense won, maybe he'll be a little bit more coy about it. It's my little joke, but or maybe it's not a joke. Maybe he won't, if the defense won't say who won. But we're also interviewing the tight ends. We'll get into much more about the tight ends and depth. I think the depth chart at tight end has become crystal clear now after that was foggy to me coming into camp. All right, speaking of depth charts, we know Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers are your starters, those two spots. And Jim Knowles really, as he says, in the back seven, he's not really into rotating that much. He's into playing the starters. They're starters for a reason. They're in good shape, great shape. Now if they get winded, they get winded. But he wants the starters played as much as possible because they're the starters. There's a reason they're the starters. So in the back seven, he says he wants the starters out there. You got 5 defensive backs and you got 2 linebackers. Those 7 guys, the starters, are going to be playing most of the snaps. But each of those guys also has a main backup. So he wants to play the starters as much as possible and then 1 main backup each of those spots. And then and that's really it. So if you're not in that mix, you're probably not going to be playing unless it's garbage time or unless somebody gets hurt. So Steele and Tommy are the starting linebackers. I was curious who's going to be number 3. There was a lot of talk about Cody Simon and Reed Carrico and on and on and on. They had so much depth there. Taraja Mitchell. Could CJ Hicks do it as a true freshman? E.A. Natiote. I mean, on and on and on. It's going to be Chip Trayanum, I was told by my source who watched the scrimmage. He said it looked like Chip was the number 3 linebacker, that was the one that Knowles was getting in there. And we're hearing good things about Chip. We're hearing he's the fastest of the linebackers and the strongest. Pretty good combination. And he was a really good, people are like, oh, here's another line. What's going on with linebacker recruiting? Another converted running back? Well, yeah, I mean, Steel Chambers is a converted running back who also was a great linebacker in high school. Same thing with Chip Trayanum. These guys just wanted the glory position at first and wanted to play running back, which is why Trayanum went to Arizona State at first. They're like, you can play running back for us. Ohio State was like, we want you as a linebacker. Point of the matter is, looks like Chip Trayanum's at number 3 linebacker. And I think that's a good development. And again, if something happens, you got good depth there with guys, all the guys I mentioned, Cody Simon, on and on and on and on. So we'll see. Again, I keep saying, I think this linebacking core is going to be good. I'm curious if it can be better than that. I'll be surprised if we're looking at it like it's a weakness like we were the last couple of years. In large part because of the scheme. Also because Tommy and Steele are a year older. They got now a year basically of starting experience under their belt. They rotated. Al Washington was rotating those guys like they were a hockey line last year. It was, musical chairs at linebacker. Knowles doesn't play that game. You're a starter for a reason. I bet you there won't be a linebacker quit mid-game too. What a mess the linebacker room was last year. I mean, at least Dallas Gant left in the middle of the season, but it was classy, and Kayvon Pope, I've never seen it, just in spectacular fashion, quitting in the middle of a game at Ohio Stadium while yelling at Al Washington and throwing a fit. And that was on Kayvon Pope. My point is, Al Washington's room was a mess last year. Of course, he had a defensive coordinator that didn't know how to put a scheme together. So this is why Ryan Day had to burn it down and bring in Jim Knowles and Tim Walton and Perry Eliano. And back to recruiting real quick. I think Tim Walton's crushing it, and so is Perry Eliano. And Tony Alford's such a good recruiter. They're having him help with defense now. He helped get Arvell Reese. He's helped get some other guys. I love that they're using Tony Alford because, Tony Alford, yeah, he's a running backs coach, but all the guys on the team, and you talk to some of the parents, Tony is the father for second father for some of these guys. And maybe if a guy doesn't have a father in his life, Tony might be their main father figure. And guys, and even guys that have good fathers, if they're from, Tony's their guy that they go to, and Ryan Day as well. But so Tony's more than the running backs coach. So I'm glad that he's also now helping recruiting defensive players, because why not? Maybe he did before a little bit, and I just am not privy to it. He probably did, but you're hearing a lot more about it now with Tony really being not the main guy, but helping a lot with recruiting. So I think that's fantastic. All right. Speaking of depth charts becoming a little clearer, I mentioned this earlier. I was really curious about tight end because I had some people tell me in the spring that, Joe Royer might end up being the guy. And then I was like, you know what? G. Scott Jr.'s got this high ceiling, and, he's going to be up to 240 pounds perhaps by the time camp starts. And both those things are true. talking to sources, Joe Royer is going to play a lot this year, and he's a complete tight end. He's came in about 220 pounds coming out of Elder a couple years ago when he redshirted. He's up to, 245 now, every bit of 6'5", and just a third year guy who really has even though he's a third year sophomore, really has 4 years of eligibility left because the COVID year didn't count. So we'll see about that. But G. Scott Jr., again, he did get up to 240 pounds. He is making plays. He's been taking first-team reps sometimes along with Joe Royer. Great sign for G. Scott Jr. Mitch Rossi's been a little banged up. He's on a pitch count. He's practicing after missing spring. Had a surgery after the season, played in the Rose Bowl, played well in the Rose Bowl. So he's playing through an injury, required surgery. So he's a little bit on a pitch count, just like Cam Brown, the corner, is on a pitch count during practice and scrimmages. But at least they're out there playing and should be fine for the season. So G. Scott Jr., Joe Royer, and Mitch Rossi are going to play. They're all going to be in the mix. You're going to see them out there when they're in 12 personnel. Sometimes one of those guys will be the only tight end when they're out there. Heck, maybe they'll do some 13 personnel with 3 tight ends. And I don't think we'll see too much of that. But they'll mix in. Ohio State runs more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends than I think a lot of people think. But to bury the lead here, well, you guys can see on the ticker, unless you're just listening to the audio-only version. But I think I hinted enough to it. Cade Stover's tight end 1 for sure. For sure. Every source I talk to says, not only is he tight end 1, but he looks really good. And the one practice we were able to see the entire practice, which was last Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday. What jumped out to me was not when he was going over the middle, making short passes over the middle. He looked good. I mean, Cade's a big, strong guy that moves well and loves football. We saw him playing linebacker and playing pretty well in the Rose Bowl. Just so and that's how he was in high school. Won the Mr. Football Award here in Ohio over Mayan Williams, who was the runner-up that year. Mayan was a junior, Cade was a senior, and Cade played everywhere. And I think he settled in at tight end. But last Thursday, I noticed twice C.J. Stroud threw bombs to Cade Stover, like one on a wheel route and one I don't think it was a wheel. It could have been. It looked like they just kind of motioned him out, and he just ran faster than the DB expected, or maybe it was a linebacker on him and got past him. One was a wheel route. My point is, twice down the sideline, C.J. Stroud hit, and there were great throws by C.J. Stroud too. Shocking, right? C.J. Stroud threw a deep ball accurate, or any football accurate. I know you guys were surprised to hear that. But I'm talking, Cade Stover looked like he was moving real well, and he caught a ball 45 yards in the air from Stroud twice. Both of them would have been long touchdowns if they were going live. They were being covered. Stroud was being rushed, but they weren't actually tackling to the ground while we were out there. They were thudding up, and both times the offense went crazy when Cade Stover caught those long passes from Stroud. So, if you're wondering, well, how's it look at tight end? Well, now you know. Cade Stover is clearly tight end 1, but they also like Joe Royer and G. Scott Jr. and Mitch Rossi. And, true freshman Bennett Christian might be coming on a little bit. I saw him out there taking a lot of second-team reps while we were out there, mixing and matching at certain spots. I caution, whether you're reading my practice report or even any of the other great members, not that I'm a great member, we got a lot of great reporters on this beat. I'm sure you read their stuff too. One thing I would caution, except for the obvious guy, when you're reading these practice reports, except for the obvious guys like C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, now Cade Stover, Travion Henderson, we could go on and on. Don't read too much into these depth charts because they are rolling guys in and out. Again, there are obvious ones. Ronnie Hickman's going to start. Tanner McAllister is going to start. Josh Proctor is going to start. Maybe start talking about, I hear that C.J. Hicks was getting second-team reps at linebacker. It's yeah, he was, but he's probably more like 5th or 6th on the pecking order. That does not mean he's necessarily, going to be that number 3 linebacker, because we're hearing that's going to be Chip Trayanum, or he might not even be that number 4 guy. Probably more like 5 or 6 right now, but is going to rotate in. There's no way C.J. Hicks is going to redshirt. We all know he's going to play, and I think he might play a decent amount. I'm very high. I think he's going to be a future star. This year, we'll see. I think the one thing he is working for him, even though he's a true freshman and there's a lot of depth at linebacker for the Buckeyes, is the fact that there's not a lot of star power at linebacker, if any at all. I like Steel Chambers and I like Tommy Eichenberg. Do we think they're going to be stars, though? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe one of them will break out as a star. I don't think so. I think best case scenario is one of those guys or both of them are going to be like very good. Not a superstar, but very good. I think that every Buckeye fan would take that and run with it. I just hope they're good. And I think they will be. I think both those guys will be good. And then we'll see behind them. But I think it's going to be Chip. But CJ Hicks, he'll play this year. The only question is how much. But he is the one potential superstar in this group. Okay? And maybe Chip is too. I don't know. I said he's the fastest and the strongest. That's a damn good combination to have as a linebacker. And CJ Hicks is plenty fast, and so is Steel Chambers. Those are the next two fastest. Chip's faster than them. So we'll see. I really like CJ Hicks. Maybe he will break out as a star as a true freshman. I think that's probably too much to ask, but he's going to be a future star. All right. A few more things to get to. All right. I found this really interesting. Okay, so what a huge day for the football program this weekend, both recruiting and Saturday for the team itself. So they announced their captains, and if we were betting, I would have got a few of these wrong for sure. I'm happy for all these guys. I think all these guys obviously deserve it, but I'll admit I'm surprised about a couple of them. Not surprised about Cam Babb, who was also the Block O recipient. Everybody is rooting like crazy for this kid. He's a little banged up. He's never caught a pass at Ohio State. Fifth-year senior now. He's had 4 surgeries, mostly on his knees. Rooting like crazy for that kid, and you can see why. I mean, when you just hear him talk just a little bit, you can see why easily right away why his teammates and coaches love him. Tough as nails. I didn't think he'd come back after that last serious injury, and here he is. So Cam Babb, not a surprise, and he got the Block O recipient, which was really cool. I like that newish tradition they've started. Tommy Eichenberg, that makes sense. Tyler Friday, from everything Ryan Day was saying about him, I guess that shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but it was, because I thought Tommy was a good choice because, they're talking about how he, along with Steel Chambers, has solidified things, but you're hearing Tommy might be like the better, maybe more vocal leader of the two, which is funny when you think about it, because if you've watched any of Tommy's interviews with us, although he's a lot more long-winded this year than he was last year. That's a low bar. Last year was like you asked Tommy a question, and give you 2 words, and that was it. You could tell. Not a fan of talking to the media, but he's opened up a little bit more now. He's more, not that he wasn't. I don't think it's like he wasn't comfortable, that he was nervous. I think he just didn't want to talk to the media. There's two, and maybe he was a little nervous. Who knows? But he came across more like I don't like talking to the media. Never offends me. It doesn't, even as a media guy. I get it. But I'm hearing Tommy's in the locker room like a really good leader. So you can't take what they say to them when they're doing interviews with the media and be like, oh, he doesn't have a good personality. How could he be a leader? What they show the media might not necessarily be what they are in the locker room. Some guys are who they are. I think a guy like Taraja Mitchell, kind of goofy, kind of a happy-go-lucky guy. I bet he's the same way. But I bet Tommy's a little bit more reserved with the media and lets it go in the locker room. So Tommy, not a surprise to me. Tyler Friday was nothing, and Ryan Day talked him up, and I know he's a leader, 5th-year guy, coming back off that injury. But I was surprised Ronnie Hickman was not one of the captains. He was at Big Ten Media Days as one of the 3 player reps. That told me, well, he's going to be one of the captains. If you told me they're going to have 6 captains and Ronnie Hickman was not going to be one of them, I've been like, what? He was one of the 3 player reps at Big Ten Media Days. What are you talking about? So that surprised me. The other guy that was at Big Ten Media Days that wasn't a captain was Jackson Smith-Njigba. That surprises me. You might say, well, kind of a soft-spoken guy. True, but as Ryan Day said, he might be somewhat soft-spoken, but when he talks, everybody listens. He's got a commanding voice, and he went to Big Ten Media Days. So that surprised me as well. The one guy that did go to Big Ten Media Days that is a captain is C.J. Stroud. No surprise there. Sorry, my voice is a little scratchy this morning. Cade Stover, that was a little bit of a surprise, but the more I think about it, it's not, because everything he's always been a hard worker, but he's taken it to a new level. So that's another one. And one that was a surprise to me was Court Williams. And I say this even knowing that multiple coaches said, this wasn't off the record, they told the entire media this, that Court Williams was probably the hardest worker on the entire team. Now, he's only a 3rd-year sophomore and hasn't played a lot of football, so I thought maybe Court Williams would be a future captain, not necessarily as a sophomore, even if he's a 3rd-year sophomore. But when you are the hardest worker on a football team that has 105 players, 80 right now 83 scholarship players. They're waiting on Parker Lewis. They're really 2 under right now. So I hope a guy like Xavier Johnson gets a scholarship. He's always making plays when we're out there. I really thought, so some of those guys did surprise me. But Court Williams, if you're the hardest worker on a team that has all of these guys, basically 100 players, and a lot of these guys are super hard workers, and you're the hardest worker, that says a lot. So Court Williams, he's not going to be a starter, but he's going to play a lot as that backup to Josh Proctor. He's going to be all over special teams, and hopefully Proc stays healthy. But if Proc gets injured again, Court Williams can more than hold the fort down if he's a starter. So there you go. I thought there were some surprises there, but there are your 6 captains. Again, kind of feel bad for Ronnie Hickman and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I guess JSN's just got to come back for another year so he can be a captain, right? It's not going to happen. I'm really glad Stroud was named a captain, though, because, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal because it would have been his 3rd year, but I always harken back to Chad Henne. He was a 4th-year starting quarterback. Even as a senior, wasn't named a captain by his teammates. I was like, how are you a 4-year starting? If you're a 4-year starting quarterback and you're not a captain, something's wrong. Heck, if you're a senior and you're quarterback and you're the starter, you better be one of the captains. So I love that Stroud. And if you've listened to Stroud's interviews this year, he's still humble, but he's so much more comfortable. Not that he was uncomfortable last year, but he's got this quiet confidence about him. Because he's not trying to win the job. He's not trying to wonder how things are going to be as a starting quarterback. He's been through that. Now he knows what it's like. He's had super success. The job's his. He can just focus on being great. And that oozes through when you watch his interviews. So Stroud, a little bit soft-spoken, but I love that he is a captain. That's important for your quarterback to be a captain. All right. Great stuff. Appreciate you guys joining me. There was a lot to get into. Really appreciate you guys joining me. I know you have a lot of choices. Thank you so much for being loyal viewers and listeners of the show. I appreciate it very much. If you like the show, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, depending on what platform you are watching or listening on. All that stuff really helps us. Again, thanks so much to all of you. Hope everyone has a great day.